Alrighty, we should be live any moment now. I'm just gonna make a couple of updates here, and we're off to the races with today's edition of the Monday show. And even though this is not really the best thumbnail image, we're gonna use the space thumbnail because we're gonna do some space stuff today. For anybody tuning in on the replay, I would humbly request that you consider hitting that like and subscribe button. For anybody watching live, I would suggest saying hi. No, I'm kidding. You can do whatever you want. But anyway, I'm just making sure I get all my settings, all my ducks in a row, as they put it, right? And we're gonna have to play something on the HDMI input, but I don't know if it's gonna work. Nah, jokes aside, it's not gonna work. Nah. Let's take a look. Okay, so just give me 1 second. USB cap. Now we might not even be using the USB capture device today, but I want to make it work anyway because I have a couple ideas. Well, that's interesting. Look at that. I'm not even sitting there. Where's that camera angle coming from? Elgato virtual camera. I didn't even know that was a feature. Anyway, we are looking for USB video. All right, that's about right, but I'm not seeing Nintendo 64 on there. So luckily nobody's tuning in just yet, so I got time to check my N64 connection. Even though we're not playing N64 today, I just want it ready. Hey Lady Mist, good to see you. You're in for a show today. Well, of course, it's titled show. Aha, that's the culprit. I found the culprit, and its name is being plugged in. As they say in tech support, is it plugged in? The answer was a resounding no. But now, it is a resounding yes. But the question is, will it work? Just give me 1 moment to check my connections, please. Hey Google, switch input to HDMI 1. Right, so the N64 is hooked up. But where does the connection go? Well, let's see. Input goes here. Output goes there. Input goes to your left elbow, then to your right elbow. Okay, we're ready to go. So, like I said, I'm probably not playing N64 today, but I really wanted to have it hooked up because I want the option. And, did I plug in the wrong? Oh, I see. I didn't plug it in all the way. Well, that'll solve that issue. So now we should be in good shape. Let me just validate some stuff here. And it's wonderful. Whoops. And it's wonderful having you here, Lady Mist. And I apologize for the slight delay. I promise to get this show on the road any second now. So there we go. Okay, good. So I just want to make sure that was ready because if I play any N64 today, that is a necessity. Now, unfortunately, I don't have the USB capture dongle that I normally like to use. So, hopefully there's not like a delay in the video signal, but right now it looks like the picture looks good. So I'm going to leave that as is for now, and we'll come back to that a little later. I'm just basically making sure a couple of settings are selected, even though I probably should have done that before the stream. Anyway, we're in good shape now. So I think, just 2 more things I tweak, and we're going to get right onto it. So there we go. Okay, digital audio device, boom, boom. And that'll probably be fine. So, we'll just do that. Let's get the show off to the road here. So, where is that? What am I looking at? What is this? What is that? Really, I don't know what that is. Like, I don't know why there's a red thing up there. I don't see anything that should be red. What is that? What is that supposed to be? I know I sound like a madman right now, but I just want to know. I want to know what that is. Like, why do I have a... Is that like a picture of a piece of felt from something else I did recently? Like, what is going on? Okay, that's part of the camera view. Aha. Well, for the introduction to today's show, we are going to just play with things until we figure out why. What is that? What is that? So I'm looking at it right now. And there's something in the corner of that video frame, like... what is that? It's definitely in the frame. I just don't see it. Oh, there it is. Okay, I found it. I had... Remember that Mrs. Flu mask I wore? Well, if you don't know what I'm talking about, on Wednesday's Floral from Under a Rock show, I was playing dress up as Mrs. Flu. And, well, basically, I have the mask on top of my tower. So at least we know what that is. And so actually, I want to do the Gundam thing, but I promised that I'd give a tour of microprocessors today. So I think I'm going to see, you know, right now we got one cool person in the chat. So I'm going to see if any nerds show up before I do the microprocessor viewing. And so before we do the microprocessor viewing, I got two things to show y'all. So basically, I was working on a Gundam model, the original RX-78-2 Armor Rose Gundam. And I lost like a couple of pieces. I lost like a number of pieces, yeah. So like I bought a second one. See, like I got two right here. And it was only like $11. So it's like really, you know, not a big deal. If anything, it gives me an opportunity to practice with the, what do you call it? The painting. In fact, I ordered an interesting tool today. It's like an airbrush, but what you do is it has a mounting point where you stick a Gundam marker. So you have these markers here. So it's like an airbrush, but it has like a little holder where you put like if this is the airbrush gun, you put the Gundam marker on an angle like this. And the tip of the marker is like right in front of the air, where the air comes out of the nozzle. In fact, that's called a nozzle. And it'll essentially allow you to airbrush with these pigments. And the downside is these pigments aren't like enamel paint. They don't just like stay on forever. You spill rubbing alcohol on it, it's gonna wash off. But I'm ordering a clear coat paint that I could put on after the fact. So anyway, you can see I already built the Gundam, but what happened was I had a couple of discrepancies. So for one, I messed up on the head a little bit, but it's not catastrophic, but you know, I could do better with the head. So by having a second model kit, I could start from scratch. But when I did this head, I lost the red piece that goes over here. So, I mean, at this point, I might just start from scratch. Maybe I'll just swap out the body because, I mean, I already built this up. So why go to the trouble of doing this part again? I can always build the other chest later. But my arms and the body, and even for now, the head is fine. I just need that red piece, but I think I'm going to build the head from scratch tomorrow because, I mean, I'd rather put the red piece on a brand new head instead of this one, which is like a little sketchy. I can probably make the part out of putty. In fact, I can make a mold of the part that I have. So there's that. So yeah, you know, pretty cool. We got the beam sabers in the back, which I think is always a cool look on the original Gundam. One of them is actually glued into place so it won't fall out. This one does come out if you give it a yank. So yeah, we got that. Maybe we will play Pod Racer because I'm already getting bored. No, I'm not getting bored, but you know what I mean. And then I promptly misplaced the better part of a leg. So I got like a foot and a leg, and I couldn't even tell you where the remainder of the leg is. So it could be on my bed. It could be under my bed. So I originally bought the second kit just to replace a missing piece from the Reddit runner. And now apparently I'm also going to be redoing an entire leg. So that's fine. At least I have it. But I'm super excited. So tomorrow night, maybe Wednesday night, And tomorrow night, I gotta finish up, whether I stream it or not, I gotta finish up on the RX-78 Gundam. But I'm very excited about something. So, I have a Victory Gundam, and Victory Gundam is my favorite for some weird reason. I mean, like, it's not everyone's favorite, but I am quite the fan of the series. I mean, like, you know, I don't even think the director likes Victory Gundam. But anyway, this is a the first, you know, basically there's two Victory Gundam. There's actually a number of them, but essentially this is the first Victory Gundam. And you can see this is the 30th anniversary edition. That's why you have this like part where the legs are kind of like part of the box. And I bought this in Chinatown. Maybe I paid $50 for it. I'm not really sure what I paid for it in Chinatown, but I bought it in Chinatown, I think near Elizabeth Street, like over a decade ago. And I remember at the time I was so pumped. I was like, oh man, it's like getting 3 Gundams for the price of 1. And it is. Look, see, like, look at this shit. You got, in fact, I think this has 2 core fighters. So you got the regular core fighters. So basically that's where the cockpit or the, you know, chest turns into a fighter plane or core fighter. But then it has this one called the Hexa. And it's a little hard to see, but the Hexa type core fighter has rabbit ears. You can see like these little things sticking out the back of the head. If this was standing up like a normal Gundam, these would be rabbit ears poking out the back of the head. And that's because this is actually, when it's in a Gundam mode, the Hexa is the command unit. This is like, you know, the Victory Gundam that is used as the command, you know, commander's, you know, unit. So that's why, for whatever reason, has the rabbit ears instead of the normal, you know, V-shaped antenna or what have you. And yeah, I agree. It is, Lady Mist, it is a nice looking Gundam. I completely, wholeheartedly agree. And so, unfortunately, years ago I built the core fighter and then I gave up. I took a break. I took a long break because I didn't have the patience for it. I did everything properly. Like, I used an X-Acto knife or sandpaper to, like, you know, sand away the burrs. But I just didn't have the patience, so I put it down for a while because I was like, if I spent so much time on the core fighter, I was like, how long is it going to take to build the whole damn thing? But recently, you know, you saw I finished up, basically more or less finished up on a high grade. This is master grade. This is a high grade Victory type. Obviously, I detached the backpack for now, but I'm kind of tweaking the paint job still. But basically, this thing is built, and it wasn't that hard. But of course, you don't have a cockpit that opens. You can't see the pilot. It doesn't transform into a fighter. And it comes with a separate fighter that you build, but it doesn't become part of the Gundam. Whereas this one here, like, this is the cockpit and the chest. This docks with, like, you got the arms and you got the legs, basically. And then if you put both the arms and the legs onto the fighter and you know, reshape it, you get a full-on Gundam, basically. So it's almost like having 2 or 3, you know, models for the price of 1. It's not exactly true. Now, interestingly, there's another one that looks like the old gun cannon. So in the original Gundam, they had a unit that had 2 barrels on the shoulder, and it would shoot artillery. And there's a Victory Gundam that has a pair of beam weapons that are mounted to a backpack and that shoot over the shoulder. And apparently the kit for that one costs like $140 or $150 easily. At least now it does, now that it's kind of rare. But apparently that model has 3 core fighters. Now, my only question was, I don't have an answer at the moment. I'm not going to look into it right now. If I misplace this core fighter and I decide to build this core fighter, does this core fighter transform into a Gundam cockpit, or is this core fighter like, you know, a non-transformable? Because I suspect that you can transform this guy, but you can't transform that one. I could be wrong, but there's another one, they call it the V-Dash, and basically it's the one that has these shoulder-mounted cannons. And I have a miniature version of it laying around somewhere, but let's not go crazy looking for things right now. It's bad enough that I can't find my Nintendo Switch controller. Haha, Punk Waddle, what up, homie? I didn't even mean to do that, but it's good to see Punk Waddle. So where was I? I was here. So yeah, anyway, what did I do? I ordered a new one today, but I didn't order the V2. No siree. I mean, I didn't order the Victory Gundam. No, I ordered the V2. And we're going to go and look up my Amazon order history right now. Together. Just like the comic book roundtable. No, I'm kidding. Just like Eric O'Sullivan and his coffee table. Where you can bring coffee, beer, or coffee. But no, jokes aside, let's get to the Amazon history and I'll show you what I got. So this is the V2 Victory Gundam. This is the second Victory Gundam. And it's just like, you know, same TV series, just came out in a later episode. And it's a pretty simple model, but you can see, like, it's got a lot of the same hallmarks. And if we look up YouTube videos of this thing, you'll see it transforms. So literally, this chest unit has the nose of an airplane folded into the belly. And when you flip it upwards, and then this part slides forward, you reveal the window to the canopy or the cockpit window. And so that's the core fighter. So you got this core fighter becomes the chest of this particular mech right over here. And then of course you got the core fighter with the arms. And you got the core fighter with the legs, because I think you can dock with one or the other, but not both. Once you dock with both the legs and the arms, you have to become a full-on Gundam. And so basically my plan is to work on this one. And then after I work on this one, if I still can't find the missing parts, the missing core fighter from the one that I just showed you, I'll order another one. Because worst case scenario, I have two of them. And I kind of thought about this. I said, look, if I build an extra one of these, is it really a big deal? What would happen is either A, I'll find the missing core fighter. And if I find the missing core fighter, then fine, I'll have two of them. But if I don't find a missing core fighter, I can still build the arms and the legs for this model here. So what happens is, I'll buy a new one, I'll build it in its entirety. But if I run into any weird issues with the arms and legs on the, you know, replacement model, at least I have a spare set of arms and legs. Sometimes you'll have like a part that decides it wants to fall off. Or you'll run into a situation where you have to glue a part on. And that's something that, like, one thing I learned recently was that you'll have like this stuff right here. This is the Tamiya cement, and you got the extra thin cement. And this stuff on the right is great for hiding panel lines. This stuff here, if you spill it on the wrong part by accident, it literally melts the plastic before your eyes. Like, you could see the plastic changing. The plastic will start swelling up on you. So it's like you gotta put a very gentle touch of this particular, and it smells, the fumes are much stronger on this one. So, you know, it's a good type of cement, but, you know, you get my drift. So now, let's get on to the next segment. Today's planned microprocessor thing. Yeah, I was going to do a little thing on microprocessors. I kid you not. And so, let me just get my little thing ready, and I'm going to tighten up my camera arm. I would love to move the camera arm a little bit to this direction, but I also don't want to, because right now, I don't mind it blocking my right monitor, but I mind it blocking my front monitor. Yeah, and I certainly have a shit ton of spare parts for the RX-78-2 that I'm gonna finish tomorrow night. Whether I do it on stream or not, I don't know, but I'm definitely gonna finish it tomorrow night, or most likely tomorrow night. I shouldn't say definitely if I'm not sure. So anyway, where to begin? Let's see if we can put these microprocessors in chronological order. Now, I don't have ancient microprocessors, but I have near ancient microprocessors here. So I'm gonna try to just make sure I grab just one of each type and line them up on my desk in, you know, like more or less chronological or historical or in order of performance, you know? And I think we're already doing it. So, looking good so far. I just need to find one. Okay, there it is. Okay, good. I found my Aztec coin. Not that we need the Aztec coin, I just thought it's kind of cool. So, anyway. Good, we got these in order. The only thing I'm missing is an Intel overdrive, and I'll explain what that is in a moment. Okay, cool. Looking good, looking good. Alright, and we're gonna put these in some kind of imperfect order. Okay, actually that works good. They fit on my little tray. Alright, are you ready? If Snowdub is here, we would play that song. Are you ready? Anyway, and I think Snowdub says, can you dig it? And speaking of can you dig it, can you dig the Guinea Pig Collective? Yeah, we got Tommy and the Guinea Pig Collective here. I should make him a mod just so I can let him post his link in. But I'll do it for you because your channel has great content. So I'd say subscribe to Tommy and the Guinea Pig Collective. I'm kidding, because I'm Italian. So anytime I hear Guinea Pig, I'm thinking like, you know, the derogatory word for Italian. I'm allowed to say it. I'm Italian, right? And so it's like, I'll just say, like, I see Guinea Pig Collective, I'll be like, Tommy and the Us Pig Collective. But anyway, enough about being racist here, self-loathing racist, whatever. I love being Italian. We got better food. Wow, that hologram sticker. I'm going to have to hold that up to the camera. That thing is reflecting some bright light right there. So what are we looking at right here? What are these microprocessors? And what are we missing? Well, we got multiple 486 microprocessors right here, and they all fit. Even the AMD clone of the 486 fits in the same socket. What up, Pop Culture Mechanic? I was just showing my Victory Gundam, and I got great news, Pop Culture Mechanic. Even though I'm still missing the core fighter to my Victory Gundam, I ordered the V2 Victory Gundam today, which has a transforming core fighter, just like the first Victory Gundam. But I really want to do the first Victory Gundam. I don't know, that one's closer to my heart. But nonetheless, we now have this is the high grade. I have a master grade one of these coming in the mail by Wednesday, I believe. So I'm looking forward to getting started on this one, because I really I wanted to start, like I said, I have the box for the V2, the V1 right here, and I love it. But I want to wait to be certain that I cannot find a missing core fighter before I order one of these for $75. So instead I spent about, in fact, I think it might cost me more than $75. But anyway, let's get back to the topic here. So the 486 class microprocessors were preceded by the 386 and the 286. And the 286 is basically, you know, an iteration of the 8086 processor, which I don't think we want to get into the weeds on that tonight. But if you have any question, I mean, sure, I can definitely expand on that history right there. But bottom line is that you had a processor called the 8086 processor, and then they basically, to retain backwards compatibility, came out with the 286. And the 286 basically has more instruction sets. It can handle newer code, so to speak, and be faster, of course. But at the same time, the 286 would have the ability to run the same programs that you would run on a 186. However, then the 386 came out, and that was a revolution at the time, because I think that was the beginning of 32-bit computing, although I would argue that was a 16-bit era. No, it was the beginning of 32-bit computing in some regard. And a 386 would be like, I think, the minimum you would need to run Windows 95. Now, this is not to say, actually, I think at one point I was trying to run Windows 98 on a computer that had less than a 486 at 50 megahertz, and it said you can't run Windows 98, or you can't install Windows 98 unless you have at least this many megahertz. And so what I did was I installed the operating system with a newer processor. Then I put the old processor in, and it worked. So there's different tricks, but bottom line is that the 386 was a big deal at the time. And you'll notice that when you download 32-bit binaries for Linux, they'll sometimes still say i386 next to the binary. Oh my god, Sanselton, I was thinking about you the other day. I literally mentioned you during a stream the other day. It's good to see you, though. I hope you are well alongside. Did I greet Pop Culture Mechanic? Well, if I didn't, I greet you again. Or if I did, I greet you again. But yeah, and you know, apparently Pop Culture Mechanic remembers buying his first 486 DX33 back in the day. Well, I have where's my DX? Thank you, Pop Culture Mechanic. Yeah, no, I have a DX. It's supposed to be right here. Maybe it's in my desk. Well, I guess I could just tell you guys to take my word for it, but I really did want to show you guys the full lineup. You know, it's a matter of principle. I hoard all this garbage, and by God, I'm going to show you all the shit I'm hoarding if I'm going to have it in my inventory, you know? What's the point of having some shit if I can't show it to people? But right now, in the name of expediency, I guess we're just gonna have to move forward here. So I have a 486 that says DX on it instead of DX2, and that is a 33 megahertz processor. And let me just get the video window up here, and you can see it's got a ceramic outside. This is a type of ceramic, and the DX1 would be 33 megahertz. Now, what is a DX2? Well, DX2 is clocked at 66 megahertz. Why is it clocked at 66 megahertz? Well, aside from the fact that because it's faster, and why not? The DX has a 1 times clock multiplier. The DX2 has a 2 times clock multiplier, and that's how we get 66 megahertz. And this would be pretty common fare. You could run a DX at 32 megahertz without any cooling unit, no heat sink, no fan. This you could run with just a heat sink, and a lot of times you would see these without a heat sink because they could still run, even if they got hot, they wouldn't get that hot. But then they came out with the DX4, and the DX4 is a weird animal because it was clocked at, it says 100 megahertz, but it's basically 99 megahertz because we're talking about a 3 times clock multiplier, taking that 33 times 3 and giving us a 99 megahertz CPU. And just for the record, the CPU die would be here. I probably should have looked up some diagrams today, but if you look up 486 CPU die, you'll see like a diagram that looks a lot like this. I mean, obviously it won't be the same colors, but it'll be basically what you see under here will be like a golden silicon or a coppery colored looking thing. And it'll look like a little city because these are all components, you know, like you might have like multiplication happening here, addition here, whatever, different things. Registers, which are basically like registers, I would say, if I might be, you know, someone else who knows more might say differently, but I would say that registers in a CPU are like the beads on an abacus, because essentially, you know, you got binary stuff going on here, ones and zeros, but you do essentially have rows of bits that are doing what the beads on a old abacus does. So that's what's under this golden plate under this lid right here. And let's see what the chat says here. Yeah, so actually I get a story relating to that. Pop Culture says, Pop Culture Mechanic says, I bought a DX4 100 overdrive chip. Oh my god, I'm so glad you bought that. It was a lot cheaper than buying a new computer. So yeah, so anyway, I got like a Pentium at let's just say it's a 133 megahertz Pentium. I'm not even sure if that's the case, but we got a Pentium 133 right here. And only thing I wish I could show you guys today was the Pentium with the golden lid. That one looks cool. It was an early variant of the Pentium at 90 megahertz, but it had this cool square that was like just this straight up like big chunk of gold. It looked so cool. But here's an interesting one. I had an Intel Pentium compatible overdrive. Now, there's different types of overdrives, but the one I had was one that went into the same CPU socket as this, except that on certain computers, like I had a couple of computers, like including a Dell computer, where it would have a 4th row of pins surrounding the perimeter. So if you put this 486 in, you would just have an extra row of pins on all 4 sides. But I had another processor, and it was similar, but it was a little larger, had the 4th row of pins. It had a little fan built into it, had like the cutest little fan built into it. I could probably even find you guys a picture of that, because I think we, Intel Tim Overdrive 83 megahertz. So the plot gets kind of thick here. Oh yeah, I found it. There we go. Okay. So I got one of these out of like a recycled computer, and yeah, okay, good. We got a picture of the CPU die. So it would go into a special Pentium into, you know, a special 486 socket that has the extra row, and you can see you got some what look like resistors or some kind of power distribution circuitry here. You got a fan that you can remove, and you got a little tiny heat sink, and you got a chip that's just a little bigger than a 486. And here's where things get interesting. The overdrive that I have in my possession, and unfortunately I separated the fan from it, but I guess it would still work if I did, like, you know, put a separate fan on it, was rated as a 83 megahertz Pentium compatible overdrive. So here's the trick question here. That's 83 megahertz. This is basically 99 or 100 megahertz. So which one's gonna be faster? Which one's gonna outperform which? Well, surprisingly, even though this would be faster than a 33 megahertz, 66 megahertz 486, despite it being 99 megahertz, this overdrive at 83 megahertz would actually be faster. Why? Well, because basically instruction sets, when they came out with the Pentium, and this holds true of modern processors, they add instruction sets and essentially could run different types of machine code. And well, I guess in a nutshell, if you have a new instruction set, it can do more things in fewer steps. So one good example would be, let's jump a generation ahead to the Pentium 133 megahertz. What's up, Raquel SSG 2211? She's been getting, you know, up and up on the gaming, gaming scene. So you know, check out her channel. Consider subscribing to Raquel. Consider, joining the Discord, perhaps. You know, could be a good time. You know, it could be fun. I like her rules. One of her rules is no politics. And even though I talk politics here, I really like the idea of having a no politics rule, because I love when people like, I remember my friends had a Facebook group and they were like, no politics, because it always gets out of hand. And you get that person who comes into the fucking comments and they be like, oh, but politics is part of my fiber of my being. So, you know, it isn't easy, and it's like tough shit. Like, you know, we just want to kind of get along instead of, you know, getting out panties in a bunch over politics. But anyway, getting back on topic here, I'm sorry. Where was I? So they had a Pentium at 133 megahertz. They had a 166 megahertz. Then they had some 200 megahertz models. And at one point, they came out with a Pentium with MMX technology. What is MMX? MMX stands for Multimedia Extensions. And essentially, the way they marketed it and the way that the spec sheet indicated, something that would take 10 steps, a operation that would take 10 steps for the microprocessor to complete would only take 1 step to complete. And so that meant that now clock cycles could be freed up for other operations. So for example, if I'm playing music, the act of decoding one audio sample out of that MP3 might take like 10 steps. And if you can consolidate that down to 2 steps, that means that playing music isn't going to tax the computer as much. And there was a time where if I want to play MP3s on a 486 DX2, I would have to go into the settings in my MP3 player app and tell it to downsample it to 1/4 quality. I would literally have to cut the quality down by 75% just so that the audio would play on this CPU without skipping, whereas the Pentium did not have that problem. And conversely, the DX4 could just about barely keep up, but the slightly slower, a processor that's 17 megahertz slower than this in megahertz would actually handle that type of operation much more reliably, much more effectively, much more, speedily. So, I just thought it was kind of interesting how an 83 megahertz Intel Pentium compatible overdrive, like the one we see in the picture here, how that can outperform a 486 that is technically faster in megahertz. And that's kind of important because when you're shopping for a computer, you might say my old computer is 3.2 gigahertz, but my new laptop is 2.8. And maybe that's okay because the new processor might the benchmark data might show that processor outperforms the faster processor while using less electricity. And speaking of electricity, so processors get hot because they consume a certain wattage of electricity and they emit heat. And the DX4 was interesting to me because it would get so hot that it had to have a proper heatsink and a fan on it. And if, let's say, one time I had the heatsink was loose and the heatsink was on, but there was a gap between the ceramic and the aluminum. So this thing got hot. And it didn't completely crash. It didn't burn out. But my mouse pointer started going... And as it turned out, the instant I put the heatsink back on and the fan was engaged and it was able to remove the heat from the CPU, it immediately started working right. I mean, that same phenomenon could happen on modern CPUs, but usually they get so hot so quickly that you're more likely to just get a blue screen and, your computer will crash or reboot, at least temporarily crash and refuse to start up properly until you, fix that issue. And just touch upon the chat, we got... Here, we still have 2 more weeks of elections due to ballotage. Oh, God. God, I don't even want to know. I swear, whatever happened to the fucking one-day election? It's like the people get the sniffles and now they want to, drag it out. And, I'm not totally against absentee ballots, but the way they did it it's just a hot mess, man. I mean, not even get into that. I remember Sanzoltan also says, I remember I used to have a Pentium 2 at 800 megahertz. Oh, Pentium 3. Correction, that's key. Zanzoltan had a Pentium 3 at 800 megahertz, and that thing exploded. Wow, I don't know what the fuck happened there. Because usually the Pentium 3s are a little more graceful, whereas the AMD Athlon, the early AMD Athlons, the AMD Thunderbirds, they were not so graceful. And I think actually we could find an example here. And what's up there, Bone? Good to see you. So let's see, CPU... cooling over here. Oh yeah, this is a classic video right here. I had this video back when you could download it as an AVI file from Kazaa or some shit, or go to tomshardware.com and just download the video. And I bet you this still has the techno music attached to it. And I'll give you guys the techno music if it has it, alright? Yeah, we got the techno music. Alright, you're gonna get the full experience. You're gonna be Ronnie G, which is not my real name, circa 2002. So basically, they're showing you the FPS frame rate counter, and they're running the CPU at, without a heatsink on it. And that's a Pentium 4. Well, I believe that's the William Et version of the Pentium 4. It's like the first iteration of Pentium 4. And the guy puts the heatsink back on, and suddenly the frame rate comes back up and the game's running right. And basically the consequence was application slows down, CPU survives. So far so good, right? So then next one is going to be, I think, an AMD. No, it's a Pentium 3. Now this one also handles it pretty gracefully, but it all but freezes up. And that one, it's a 1 gigahertz Pentium 3. It ran at 100 Fahrenheit. Application froze up, but the CPU did not burn out. So I guess they had to turn the computer off and on. Hey, what's up, Backup Channel? Good to see you. I don't know if I've ever met you before, but it is a pleasure to meet Backup Channel. I should probably make a Backup Channel too. Okay, so now is where things are going to get really weird. AMD Athlon 1400. Now, I don't think that's a 1.4 gigahertz CPU. At the time, AMD would like just put a number next to the CPU, and they would say that this is the equivalent of 1400 megahertz on an Intel CPU, but it would really be a 1 gigahertz. Now, I don't know if that's the case here, but this one here is one of the early codenamed Thunderbirds, I believe, that has the ceramic packaging. It has these little rubber things on the corners to help, I guess, keep the heatsink even, because with these, all you have is like just like the Pentium 3, you have that little blue or purple CPU die that's like barely that big. And interestingly, if you take the aluminum lid off of a modern CPU, you're still going to see the same type of thing, basically. A little tiny piece of exposed silicon. So let's get to it. We're going to continue here. Now this one had a really aggressive blower fan on it. Now you see they got like a freaking illegal operation error message, the freaking application. And now you got smoke coming off the thermal compound, I think. Something's emitting smoke. And, well, what's the consequences of this? Well, I'm sure they'll tell us. Guy takes the temperature reading using some, laser thermometer from 2001. And he says, well, temperature got to 698 degrees Fahrenheit. Now, I do use Celsius on my telescope, but I can't think in Celsius. Generally not. I kind of am beginning to learn how to think in Celsius. But Fahrenheit, I can relate to Fahrenheit. And it says application crashes. CPU and board are up in smoke. Okay, so that didn't end well. Next one. Does it tell us what the next one? Okay, this is a 1200 socket 462 and it's got a VIA chipset. Let's see what happens with this one here. So they take the heatsink off. Guys having a hard time because that's a janky mechanism. Back then it sucked mounting a heatsink. You could break the plastic really easily by accident, and if you broke it, it was almost impossible to clamp that thing down. So this one makes some smoke, gets really hot, probably also wrecked CPU like our boy Pop Culture says, just like the last CPU, this one here. And I don't remember the name Palomino. It sounds vaguely familiar. Maybe that was a product line. Now this one didn't get that hot, but this time not only did the app crash, but the thermal diode failed. Now I don't know if the thermal diode is on the CPU or the motherboard, but the thermal diode is basically just a a thermometer. That's all it is. And Zanzo10 says, if I had to be more detailed with my story of the Pentium, we used 220 volt, and sometimes after power outage, we got a spike of power and saw big smoke mushrooms. So the CPU, oh, okay, well, there you go. I blame Argentina. And that's the end of that video. So let's give credit to where it's due. Tom's Hardware Guide. These guys still exist, as I understand, too. And this was my first introduction to their stuff. So, yeah, pretty cool, And so, you didn't have that issue with these guys here. This one didn't even need a cooling unit. This one would generally freeze up. Now, if you kept it powered up, would it eventually burn out? Maybe. But these are all from the era, from what I understand, everything even up to the Pentium 2, maybe, don't quote me on the Pentium 2, but everything like up to the Pentium would use the same amount of electricity. Whether your computer was doing a lot or a little bit, they would use the same amount of electricity and they would emit the same amount of heat. But when they came out with like the mobile Pentium 3, they came out with something called speed step technology, and now it would be able to throttle down and up a little bit here and there. Pentium 2, I don't think was it. Now, Pentium 2, well, before we go to the Pentium 2, I'll show you something special. So I showed you these Intel 486s. The only one I didn't show you was the DX1, which is just this with a 1 times clock multiplier of 32 megahertz. And I didn't show you this one here. This is a 486SX. This is the budget Intel 486 at 25 megahertz. Now, my first laptop was a 25 megahertz 486SL. I suspect they had a bit in common, but obviously this you would find in budget desktops and in those weird laptops that use desktop components. Yes, there was a time where they would put desktop components into a laptop that looked like a little briefcase. Although that fad did come back into fashion during the early 2000s. So, you know, I wouldn't say that was a bygone era. So anyway, we also have this guy here. Now, what is this? This is an AMD 486. So this is just a DX2 clone. And apparently this DX2 clone runs at 80 megahertz. So it might be a little better. Presumably it's fully compatible with the Intel instruction set. That doesn't guarantee that it's compatible. So I got a question, Pop Culture Mechanic. I didn't realize, okay, so does that mean the other 486s do have a FPU? Because I just assumed that the FPU, integrated FPU, was a Pentium innovation. But, I mean, let's see here. Okay, apparently it does have, yeah, okay, so, yeah, okay, yeah, so you're right. And actually, interesting, the 486SX, the SX was a modified Intel 486DX with its floating point unit disabled. So in this case, the FPU was disabled and it was run at a lower clock. Now, for those who don't know what a FPU is, a floating point unit basically handles decimal mathematics. So, you know, decimal points. And you could find that useful in 3D games, applications, computer-aided drafting would be the big one, basically, that would, you know, take advantage of that. And certain times when you were doing like early graphics rendering that would use that type of mathematics, anything with an FPU would handle it fast. And before the 486, if you had a 386 processor, you have a second slot for the math code processor in some computers. And the math code processor would be like a dedicated chip for the floating point arithmetic, for the decimal math. And then, as Pop Culture reminded me today that apparently the other 486s had an FPU in them as well, just as the Pentium did. I believe when the Pentium came out, there was a known bug. I don't know if it was on this one, but on the first Pentium 90, there was some issues with, like, I think multiplication or floating point math. And I think there was a microcode update that addressed it, but that was a thing. I believe. Don't quote me on that. So anyway, we skip past the Pentium era and we go to Pentium 2. Now, you're going to notice this has a marked difference on it. Like, I mean, for one, it's the size of an N64 cartridge. Like, we have an N64 cartridge here. And that is a N64 cartridge right there, more or less. Give or take. I mean, you know, obviously, you can see the pins over here, or the contacts. This one here has contacts that resemble more like an AGP connector. Now, it's a little hard to see, but essentially, there's two rows. There's the row that's closer to me, and there's a second row of pins, and they essentially alternate like in a stack. So you have like 1, 2, or something like that. It's like they're double stacked like a double-decker bus, you know, and so they're able to double the amount of pins that fit in that type of space. So if you ever have an HGP graphics card, it's the same type of look, basically. Now, this sticker is just a sticker, and they put the information up here. You got a QR barcode, which I don't know if we can scan that to an app on the phone. And I believe this might be a 233 megahertz, so it's not that fast. It's a Pentium 2, which is at 233 megahertz. I had a Pentium at 350. I had a Pentium 2. I think I've seen them go up to 500 megahertz. But anyway, this one here has 233 megahertz with 512 kilobytes of L2 cache. And that's actually why this is so big. So basically, at this particular point in time, Intel made this processor where if you open up this cartridge, you will have a processor similar to this, or, you know, without the lid. So just like the Intel Pentium 3 you saw in the video where it had that little blue piece of silicon in the middle, that was only that big, the size of a dime. If you crack this open, you're going to see a chip that's soldered to a circuit board, and that's going to be the actual Pentium processor itself, the Pentium 2 processor. But why is it in the cartridge? Well, because they want L2 cache memory, and the L2 cache memory chips are not part of the processor core. They're not inside this little floor plan. In this little hologram sticker, there's no L2 cache here. So they have a chip here and a chip here. And because they're not directly on the die, the L2 cache has to run at half the clock speed. So if I had a 500 megahertz Pentium, my L2 cache would be 250 megahertz. So in this case, this is a 233. So it would be like 100 and something megahertz. It would be half the clock speed. And so when you saw the Pentium 3 in that video we just saw, that Pentium 3, one of the innovations of the Pentium 3 by that point was that the L2 cache memory was part of the CPU die. So let's get a picture of that here. I'm going to find a picture. So actually both with the Pentium 4 and with the Pentium 3, which is right here. So that little blue thing in the middle, the L2 cache was actually housed on that. And if you ever look at a diagram of a modern CPU, like the AMD Phenom, I have an AMD Phenom. Let's see if I'm going to get a picture here. AMD Phenom 2X2. And hopefully I get like a nice CPU diagram here. Maybe I should pick the X4, but here we go. Getting progress here. So let's try and look at a 4-core. So somewhere in here, you'll usually see a uniform pattern. And if I had to guess, the L2 cache would probably be in one of these like uniform looking blocks of stuff. Maybe over here, this is the L2 cache. So let's see if we can maybe get like a labeled diagram. Yeah, they make, oh yeah, here we go. So this is the 6-core AMD Phenom. Now it's a little complicated looking, but hopefully this diagram will help this put some questions to rest. So you got 1, 2, 3. Okay, so the 6-core has the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 CPU cores there, if I'm reading it correctly. And then you got L3 cache that is shared by 3 and 3 cores respectively. And then somewhere here, I would expect to see L2 cache. And unfortunately, this diagram is not showing it to us. So that doesn't really help me. But take my word for it. Like the L3 cache sort of gives you like an idea how that works. Because you could see like these uniform blocks. So imagine just like city blocks, but or shelves of library books, and that's essentially what we're looking at here. And it looks like we're not looking at, it looks like we're looking at 3 different CPUs here actually, but you get the idea. So let's get to the chat, then I'll get myself back on the rails. Wow, I gotta catch up here. All right, so let's see here. Haven't played those games, any of those games. I've been playing games on my gaming channel. Oh yeah. Janzo 10 and Raquel were talking about the channel. That's cool. Okay, cool. It's going to be updated. And yeah, no, Raquel's been playing games. That's actually a true fact. That is a fact. So anyway, Tommy says, I haven't bought a new game in 5 years. Nothing has been interesting to me. You know, like I've been disappointed by some of the games I bought in the past 5 years. I'm trying to think. I enjoyed playing Call of Duty Infinite Warfare. I got to revisit that game. I like the part where you get to fly to a space fighter, you know, a starfighter plane. I think that's kind of cool. Let's see here. My first PC was a Pentium Zanzo 10, Pentium 2 F366 called the Panavox. Wow, that's kind of cool. My first PC was a 486 SL, but it was really more like my dad's computer for work, but still pretty cool. Pop Coach Mechanic says, I agree about being picky about games is good. Yeah, dude, this dude just beat Luigi and Mario and Luigi All-Star. Dude, I'm stuck in that game. I got stuck in the part where you do the jump rope with, I don't know, when Mario and Luigi are doing jump rope. I got stuck there for a little while. I think I finally overcame it, but I did get stuck. I was using safety saves, and sometimes I don't remember how to load the safety save, and I'll accidentally erase the safety save instead of loading it. So, yeah, there's that, too. But of course, I'm also using the built-in save feature. Moving along, what happened to your Twitter profile? It says it doesn't exist. Oh, Zanzotan. Okay, good. I thought mine disappeared. I got worried. Not that I'm not worried. I don't use Twitter. Pop culture mechanic, indeed, especially when so many games are released being yeah, what is that bullshit? Games being released unpolished, and it's like now they like fucking use the updates as a crutch, and yeah, that is an issue, you know. I mean, for sure, no doubt about it, you know. Sometimes the re-releases are better than the new games in that regard. So luckily, there's not much I have to catch up on the chat, but I will read the last message that we said. Oh man, that game, so much struggle, Pop Culture says. I got tired of the amounts of ads everywhere, Zanzo10, and each time I went inside Twitter, I got depressed or angry, so I decided to not stay anymore. Yeah, that's right, no fucking Stockholm Syndrome, because you're in Argentina. No, I'm kidding, but, you know, because Stockholm's in Sweden. So anyway, that's the Pentium 2, and actually, there's a cool thing. So if we look up 2 processors here, that I wish I had one on display right now, but I don't, because I'd have to rip it out of my old HP Vectra, and I really don't want to do that right now. One is the Pentium Pro, and the Pentium Pro is technically older than the Pentium 2, but it's a monster. Look how big this motherfucker is. You know how big this shit is? It's like that big. In fact, the Pentium Pro is like, it's like this. It's like literally like that. Like, it's that fucking big. Okay, like that ceramic. You see this? They got two types. They got the ceramic one. They got the organic, plasticky ceramic compound. But in both types, you got these gold contacts on the top, which I believe are used for testing in the factory and possibly unlocking features. In fact, there was an AMD processor where if you ran a pencil stroke across these gold contacts, you could unlock the clock multiplier and then overclock it. The pencil stroke would essentially make an electrical connection from one to the next. But you can see here, what do we see here? You can see over here, that's the CPU core. Just like the Pentium 2, we have a CPU core right here. Well, this is obviously just a holographic sticker of one. And that's what you're seeing over here. But what's next to it? Well, that's the L2 cache I was talking about. So it's going to be an ugly picture. We can see how the CPU core looks like a city. It's got a bunch of different shapes. But this over here, it's just L2 cache memory, whatever it is, 256K. And even though it's not directly part of the CPU core, this L2 cache, unlike the Pentium 2, the L2 cache on the Pentium Pro runs at full clock. So if you got a 200 megahertz Pentium Pro, your L2 cache is running at 200 megahertz instead of running at 100 megahertz. So the Pentium Pro was cool in that regard, amongst other things that people liked about it. But that was, I think, a big thing about it. And I had one that my friend found in the garbage and gave me, and it served me in good stead for a while. I put it in, I used it for server duty for some years. And it was a really fantastic thing. It really was. And you can actually see like some of the newer Ryzen processors are physically like rivaling the size of this packaging right here. And you can see it's got the cool gold plated shit on top, you know? So yeah, there's that. And someone's got like a little specimen book. That's kind of cool, you know, looks like a picture frame, basically similar to what I had. I used to have these 486s hung up in like the little plastic things where you put your trading cards in, hung up on my wall, but they retired. The thing got a little janky looking. So yeah, there's that. So what else do we want to look at? Well, we got a AMD K6 2. Now, I don't know if this is the K6-2 with 3D Now technology on it, but that would be a supplemental instruction set that would help with games and, you know, modeling and stuff like that. But this one here is 350 megahertz, and I would say for all intents and purposes, it is effectively a Pentium 2 inside of a different packaging. The L2 cache might even be running at full clock. If you notice, it doesn't have the gold stuff that you have on the bottom of the Pentium, or, you know, like that we saw here. And that's because really the CPU is a lot like the Pentium 3 we were looking at before. If you remove this lid, and I've done it once before, you will have like a little blue or purple piece of silicon right there. And so yeah, this thing was pretty revolutionary. It looks like it fits in a Pentium socket, but I would not put it in I'm somewhat sure that you're not supposed to put it in a Pentium socket. It might be compatible with late Pentium sockets, the ones that have compatibility with the whatchamacallit, you know, MMX technologies. So moving forward, only thing I didn't show you guys was the Pentium. I'm going to show you something cool. I'm going to show you the Pentium 2 Xeon. Sig Xeon! No, I'm kidding. So this thing is a fucking weird animal. So this Pentium 2 Xeon is like tall. It's like that tall. It goes from here to here. Right? So it's like that's the Pentium 2 Xeon. Why is it in a big mother effing box? Well, it's a server / workstation CPU. And I would say that Pentium Pro, that would be a workstation CPU. But this is definitely a server CPU. And let's get a close-up picture of that board diagram. So what are we looking at here? Well, one of these is the microprocessor. And the other chip is the L2 cache memory. And essentially, unlike the normal Pentium 2 where the L2 cache is on either side and it's at half the clock speed, this L2 cache is running at the full clock speed of the CPU. And as a result of that, it gets hotter, so it needs a bit more, you know, stronger cooling basically to do what it does. So that's basically what we're looking at there. So I just thought this was an interesting one. I've never had one of these, never needed one necessarily, but it is an interesting, you know, version. Moving along, we saw a picture of a 6-core AMD CPU already, and that would have been a 6-core version of something like this. So like this is an AMD Athlon X2 That's a dual-core 64-bit AMD Athlon. They started off with single-core CPUs, and I think at one point they would just take two of those little like things, that is little blue thing. Imagine it being like the size of a dime, but instead of having one of them, you had two of them side by side on the same packaging. The packaging is this little square basically, and so that's how they do dual core. They have multiple chips on one module, and other times they would, you know, have multiple cores on one silicon die. But when they manufactured, let's say, a 8-core, in fact, for a while they had 3-core AMD Phenoms. This is an AMD Phenom. What version is this? I can't tell right now, but I've owned a dual core, I've owned a quad core version of this, and a 6-core version of this. And the 3-core, they had an AMD Phenom that had 3 cores. But how do you get a triple core processor? Like, who would come up with a triple core processor? Well, basically, when they made the 4-core AMD Phenoms, they would test it in the factory and determine that one of the cores was defective, and they would disable that core. And that's how they would sell you a 3-core CPU, because it was basically a 4-core that failed to be a 4-core. But sometimes, in order to make more cheap, you know, product available and to keep the price of their premium products up, AMD would disable the 4th core on a CPU that had all 4 perfectly good cores. They would disable one of the cores and sell it as a 3-core. And that was cool because it meant that if you had certain skills or certain BIOSes or motherboards, you could unlock the core that was disabled. And assuming that it wasn't disabled because of, you know, defect, you would have just unlocked another core, or you would discover there's some bugs and you'd have to disable it again. So that's the microprocessor collection there. I hope, you know, that was just kind of fun, or, you know, a little enjoyable here. Let me see if I have to catch up with the chat. Looks like a lot of back and forth friends conversation, which I'm entirely fine with. I can't do a regular internet search without ads and everywhere. It's to the point I dread looking anything up. Luckily, I don't need too often. Yeah, you know, I mean, I kind of just like ignore them, but I totally get where you're coming from. I hate when like I have an ad blocker on and the website like gives me shit. They're like, oh, please turn off your ad blocker. So they give you like a really aggressive pop-up to force you to like turn off your ad blocker. And actually, I just keep postponing it, but I want to go into the settings of my ad blocker and basically turn on the ads. I don't mind having ads enabled. What it is that I like to disable ads on select websites. It's like if I ever go to vicenews.com by accident, I don't want them getting fucking I don't want to look at any of their ads. Like it's like almost like a boycott. Oh, one more processor I just found here. This is a Pentium i7, I believe. I believe it's an i7 3rd gen, so it's pretty old, considering they're up to like 13th gen right now, I believe. And it needs a little bit of cleaning of the thermal compound, but what we can see here, it's a Core i7 975. So this is actually a 1st generation i7. It's not even a 2nd gen. And it's clocked at 3.6 gigahertz. I believe that's 8 megabytes of L3 cache. I don't think it's L2 cache. Maybe it is L2, but I don't know. And yada, 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 yada. So yeah, anyway, I just want to show that. Oh yeah, and the other thing I want to show you was, at some point they moved away from the pins to this land grid array. So now a lot of the times, when you put a CPU in, you don't have to worry about bending pins on the CPU itself, but you do have to worry about bending pins on the motherboard, because there's literally pins in the motherboard. Like you put this in the socket and then there's a clamp that pushes down on it. But if you bend the pins on the motherboard, you know, that could be a little bit more problematic than if you bend the pins on this end. I don't know if it's better one way or the other, but I did think this was an interesting innovation when I first saw it debuted on the Pentium D. However, I believe it actually debuted on the Pentium 4 Prescott core, which is like the last Pentium 4 basically. So anyway, what else do we want to touch on? I think, well, you know, we did the hour basically, which is good. It's my goal is to do an hour every Monday, and I'm so glad that so many of you guys tuned in tonight. If there's anything on your minds, anything you guys want to add or talk about before I conclude, let me know. Tonight is a school night. But like I said, I'm looking forward to this, yo. I'm going to finish my RX-78-2 Gundam, and I'm going to put together the missing parts. I'm probably going to rebuild the head just because I think I could do better with the head. I didn't like the way that the seam was not disappearing on the head, so I tried doing some like hand modification. I'm just not happy with it. But the new head will have the red piece that I'm missing. And of course, the rest of the Gundam will have the missing leg. So I'll cannibalize, mix and match, and if I ever find some of the missing parts, I'll build 2 Gundams, and if I don't, I can probably make some of the missing parts. Like you can see right here, I actually tried making the missing red piece out of a runner, and that is a triangle, so I may yet be able to use this on one of the 2 Gundam heads. So, you know, that's pretty much what we got right there. Pop culture mechanic. That was a nice trip down memory lane, or CPU lane. Pun intended. I like it. I like it. But yeah, man, like, I can't wait to get my V2 Victory Gundam, and eventually I really look, I don't know why this one I find more endearing, but I am just a fan of the first Victory Gundam. I mean, there's something about this first few episodes of Victory Gundam where they're launching the core fighter off the back of a truck, and they're launching the legs off the back of a truck or out of a subway tunnel, because this is like a resistance group. And like when they had these little armored plates flipped up, and the characters are just sitting on them like as if it's just a bench, and they're just all being peaceful and shit, hanging out, and you know, they nearly fall off when he stops short. But I don't know, it's just something endearing about those early episodes of Victory Gundam, and then as it went on, it got so freaking gritty. I mean, they literally came out with a team, an all-female mobile suit team, and just started killing them off one by one. But not gonna spoil it any further. So let's do a quick screen test for tomorrow. So tomorrow I want to play episode 1 Pod Racer. And so to do that, I want to make a verification briefly. We're not going to complete any races. I just want to see if this works, and just give anybody an opportunity to get any final thoughts, and if they wish. You know, if you guys think I should do open panels, or maybe like 1 open panel a month, or maybe try to just do a guest show once in a while. I really am reluctant to invite guests on, like especially higher guests with more, you know, subscribers, until I can consistently deliver and consistently have viewership. And it looks like I'm consistently delivering, at least showing up on a weekly basis, and some of you are showing up, so it's great. But let's do the quick test. And so basically, we're gonna look for, okay, episode 1 Pod Racer. I do own the game, but it's just easier to run it off of this flash cartridge, and that's what you're looking at right here. This is the knockoff version of the EverDrive 64. And I believe we hit start, it loads it, it's running the games off an SD card. And Zanzo10 says, yeah, DJ Ronnie G, I used to have an AMD K62. That was a good computer, right? It was. I loved my K62. I mean, I liked my Pentium Pro, but the K62 was better. That was a good computer. I used to play Rayman 2 back in the day. I used to play PlayStation 1 games via the Bleem emulator back then. Bleem was like just this weird thing. So we're not getting audio at the moment. And I have a theory as to why. And this is why we're testing this out. Now I have a different HDMI capture device that I can use that might be better, but I'd like to give this one a chance first. Oh, I gotta mute the desktop audio so you guys don't get any reverb. Yeah, Bleem was pretty decent for what it did, you know? I mean, for what it was available to do. Okay, so let's... That's weird. Did the game just crash? Did the game just like... Did my Nintendo just like give up on me? See, this is why we test these things out. And I swear to God, Zanzo10, if you're jinxing my Nintendo 64, because my Nintendo 64 has worked perfectly ever since I fixed my mistake with the excess use of soldering flux. But now, jokes aside, like, I think it might be the capture dongle, but normally I use a different capture dongle. Unfortunately, Elgato does not work with this HDMI mod, so I have to use a USB dongle that I don't like. And, you know, we could pick different resolutions if we want, but I think 720p should be fine. So let's try this one more time. Episode 1, Pod People. Oh, it's a virtual game console that changed MU rating. Changed to MU rating. Oh, I didn't know that. I used all of those emulators to play Monster Rancher 2. Good anime series. I didn't know they made a game out of it. So we should be hearing music I don't even know if the controller's hooked up right now. Sometimes, okay, okay, good. We got the menu up. So now it's gonna play the Star Wars music. So at this point, we should be able to fix this up and get it to work if it's meant to be. So we're just looking at the thing here. Digital audio device, properties. Then we go here and we say do this, and we tell the computer to do that. Let me see if I even get sound out of my TV. If I don't get sound out of my TV, then at least I know it's something else. Hey Google, volume 2. Yeah, we're getting the music. So, good news is we got audio on the TV. Yeah, no, so I was playing this game, Pop Culture Mechanic, on my Nintendo Switch the other day, and it was playing pretty much flawlessly. What happened was I misplaced my Pro Controller. I mean, I might just go and tear my room upside down when I get home from work tomorrow. Since tomorrow night is my Friday. And find the damn controller, because I can't play with the Joy-Con. It's just, I feel like my wrist was sore after playing on the Joy-Con for like 2 races. So that's how big of a deal it is that I find this Pro Controller that I somehow misplaced. But right now we're just doing a little troubleshooting, and I forgot. I think I wanted to paint a coin, but I figured we're already past the hour anyway. So at this point we just do a little troubleshooting and get this sorted out, because theoretically there should be 2 ways to skin a cat. No offense to cat people, but there should be 2 ways to skin a cat, and one of them should be to go into this window here, whoops, and pick my audio device. So I'm double checking it right now, and it's very interesting because it's not really even showing any signs of life. It's almost like maybe the HDMI cable is messed up. Wait a second. Testing 1 2. I got 2 ideas. You just check something real quick. Well, Switches are cool, but you probably have a better console than a Switch anyway. I mean, I got a good PC, so I don't really need, a powerful console. In fact, I'm pretty anti-console these days. This USB dongle is like a dingleberry, let me tell you. It is. Okay, so we're going to do a little science project here. We're going to disrupt the shit out of this hardware right now. So we're pulling the dongle, And tomorrow I'll come back with a different USB dongle, considering this one's being a pain in my ass. So that's my plan, and I'm sticking to it. Oh, now the audio works. You can hear it now, right, guys? Right? You got audio now? I think we fixed it. Let me know if you can hear the audio. I'm hearing it, yeah. So I basically had to unplug it and plug it back in. The only issue is I need to find a better solution because it's not giving me stereo. It's only mono. And I'm sorry, these games are made with stereo sound, so they should work in stereo. But let's give it a quick test. So today... Ooh, I gotta reconnect something here. So OBS doesn't like what I just did. Alright, well we got audio, but I'm not restarting OBS. At least we know I have a solution. I will sort this out before the stream tomorrow. Tonight is too late to play N64, but I got the video to work on my screen. Well, I got the audio to work, and I'm sure the video will work after I restart OBS. But like I said, this is like my stopgap measure. Like, if I cannot find my Nintendo Switch Pro controller, this is how we're playing Pod Racer tomorrow, because I want to resume. I was doing good in the game. Now, unfortunately, this is not the same save game as the one I'm playing on Nintendo Switch, but still, I feel like compared to the Joy-Con I have, this controller will be better than using the Joy-Con. So that's where I'm at right now. So any other thoughts here? Let me see here. Okay, so yeah, you're right. Although so far I've been pretty lucky, and I don't know if it's because the way they detect the Nintendo 64 music, it might not flag anything. Generally, they weren't using the highest quality audio on N64, so that's been a workaround. But so far, I can attest that I've been getting away with playing Pod Racer multiple times, Battle for Naboo, and of course, one of my all-time favorite games, Star Wars Shadows of the Empire. And these games have not triggered. And this game actually has pretty much real music, but it is shorter, it is lower quality. It's like lower quality than CD quality because they had to fit it on a cartridge. On the other hand, if you play Rogue Squadron and Battle for Naboo, they use MIDI music. They're no longer using like real, in order to have longer musical scores and more, you know, a longer audio track. When they came out with Battle for Naboo and Rogue Squadron, they replaced the real music with MIDI music, which is like synthesized music. So at least in my experience, I have not encountered any copyright claim issues with these games in particular, but there are times where people play certain Gundam games and the music will cause Sunrise, you know, the people who make the Gundam stuff, it'll cause them to lose their shit. So I do appreciate the, you know, reminder and point of concern, Raquel. And yeah, I agree, Popcorn's Mechanic. Pod Racer was so much fun. And yeah, Raquel has a SNES, PS2, PS3, PS4, PS5. Like, I kind of just felt like it was pointless after PS3. Even PS3 is a little weird, but like, I could play Gundam Crossfire on my PS3, so I love it. And I do want to mod my PS3 to really make it more useful. But, you know, like, PS2 was unique. Like, games like Gran Turismo 2 had, like, the way it employed the, what do you call it, Dual Shock Rumble was so seamless. It was like when you're riding on a dirt road in Gran Turismo, the controller is rumbling, but you don't notice it. But then when I was moving from the dirt pavement, the dirt road to regular pavement, it goes from to like smooth. And that's when I noticed the Dual Shock was working. Because, like, you know, Dual Shock made the game more immersive. You felt like you were driving on a rough dirt road. You felt like, you know, hitting a pothole meant something. And when you use the steering wheel a certain way, it fed back into the force feedback a little bit, the rumble, so to speak. But this rumble pack, on the other hand, my God, this thing was a freaking joke. Like, it felt like a massager. It was just like distracting. I felt like it made games harder to play because it was so distracting to hear this thing buzz. Whenever you got shot, it like made your whole controller like shake. It was just like, it wasn't really, I don't know. I don't think really, it's kind of a cute gimmick. It was innovative, but I don't know if it really added to the experience in the way that Dual Shock did it. But once I played Gran Turismo with Dual Shock, I never looked back. And like, so that's why I have Xbox 360 controller on my PC. That's why when I recently replaced the Xbox 360 controller, upgraded, I upgraded to this type here, which this one's pretty cool. I have an application that lets you control the, you know, haptics and the sensor, the resistance on the triggers. It's really, really cool. So yeah, anyway, I think we covered all our bases today. I covered what I set out to do today. And we're going to keep doing this, okay? This is just another Monday show, and we're going to keep them coming. So, you know, I'll be here next Monday. I aim to start at 10:30 p.m. But, you know, depending on when I get freshened up and when I finish dinner, sometimes I run a little bit late. Generally, I don't run much earlier. I mean, I would love to start at 10 p.m. and end at 11. Oh, shoot, I just remembered something I have to do before bed. So, before I do get into bed, we have to log into my telescope because tonight's a clear night, guys. And so I've been able to actually get some good astrophotography done tonight. So we were looking at the North America Nebula, and normally we'd use a hydrogen alpha filter or ionized electrically charged hydrogen gas. And you can see right here, like what the stars look like right now. Let's verify some things here. Okay, so it looks a little grainy, it looks a little noisy. And if we zoom out, let's see what we get. So it looks like it shifted a little bit. Let's make sure the auto guiding is on. It is, okay. When I took a picture in the hydrogen filter, this thing was popping out so bright. So bright, I'm gonna let you guys see what I caught, all right? So I got you. We're gonna let you guys see what we got earlier because you guys deserve to see it because you stuck with me all this time. So I believe it was here, and if I remember correctly, I can tell it to open up in the Subaru image processor Macaulay. And while that's loading, okay, it's already loaded. Let's see if this is the one. See that right there? See how like that looks like North America or the Gulf of Mexico a bit? Don't worry, we're gonna crank it up a little bit. See, it looks like a cloud, but it's not. It's a nebula. And essentially, what we're going to do is we take multiple pictures of the same target, and then we stack them. And when we stack them, we get more contrast, we get more detail. And it is a result of that that gives us, you know, like just more definition. Like you could already see some stuff here, right? So that's what I did. I started this when I was on the bus riding my, you know, taking the bus home from work. And, you know, we're just going to keep at it. When I fall back asleep, it's going to keep shooting. And one thing is that as the temperature outside cools down, the telescope shrinks. So that might be a factor. And so what we did was we took pictures in sulfur, which is ionized sulfur. And so I took pictures in hydrogen alpha. That's basically a shade of ruby red. We took pictures in O3, which is ionized oxygen, basically blue. So bottom line is this is red, this is blue, and this is like a yellowish color. And if I combine stacked, you know, data from all three of these filters, we'll have a picture that has a lot of red in it, a lot of blue in it, and a little bit of like yellow along the edges of the North American Nebula. And that was basically my goal, you know. So that's where we're at with that right now. And you know, what I'm gonna do is just double check some things. And check out my mouse. I fixed my mouse so I could do this now. So when I used to use my mouse wheel, I would go to zoom in, it would jerk back. I'd be zooming in, and go like it would just like constantly go in and out. And basically what I did was I opened it up and I squirted a shit ton of alcohol on the encoder, which is in the center of this wheel here. And that fixed the problem basically. So we can actually operate the mouse again. So right now this target here is at a 40-degree angle. The lower it goes, you know, the more atmosphere it's got to cut through. Now, it's not at a bad angle right now, but I want to, you know, try to like start another target. Now, here's the caveat here with the way that my telescope is set up. Ooh, Andromeda. Let's do Andromeda. Because Andromeda is a pain in the ass. It needs a lot of data. I need to sleep too, Pop Coach Mechanic. Same thing, like usually, like you precede me going to bed. Like I literally end right after you leave. But no, jokes aside, you have a good night. I'm just going to line up this target before I go to bed and make my way to my Friday at work. So basically, this is called the meridian. This is the center of the sky. And if my telescope is tracking a target, the Earth is going to rotate and it's going to keep moving this way, this star. And the problem is that if my telescope starts here and keeps tracking a target until it goes way down here towards the west, there comes a point where the camera could bump into the tripod leg, and that could damage things. It could damage a USB cable, for example. So usually if I'm going to be monitoring the telescope, like from here all the way past the center of the sky, aka the meridian, I can, you know, manage it. But if I'm sleeping, the problem is that the auto guiding, which is this thing where it locks onto the target for me, will get thrown off, and it doesn't automatically restart auto guiding. So my best bet is to pick a target on this side of the meridian. And tonight it looks like we're going to be picking the Andromeda galaxy, which is basically this thing here. And unfortunately my camera is rotated in such a way that, you know, this is literally the red box that represents my camera. And that's okay, because I don't really care. I just want to get a picture of the M32 and an M110, and we got them side by side here. So you're not going to see it tonight, but I'm going to show you guys how I begin the process of aiming the telescope at a new target. Now, if I didn't have to be at work, I might say, let's wait for one more picture to finish recording. And in fact, I got to change the setting here. So there we go. See that progress bar? That tells me that the current picture has only a couple more steps left on it. But I don't want to wait an entire minute and 15 seconds. So we're going to hit the stop button right now, even though it's going to waste some imaging time. And here's the caveat. Like, I could capture Andromeda with a red filter, but I think we're going to do Andromeda in the hydrogen filter, because it'll block out the light pollution from the moon, for example. So where do we begin? Well, one, we turn off the auto guiding. Okay, auto guiding disengaged. Then we go to the map and we press a button, Control 1. And now what it's going to do is you're going to see the reticle. This little crosshair you can see is already moving in on the target. And if you were in my backyard, you see the motorized mount actually manipulating this. Now, alternative to Andromeda, I tell you, I really am tempted to do Triangulum Galaxy. In fact, Triangulum is kind of tempting because it fits inside the what you would call it. It fits inside of the, what do you call it, you know, the square. But I think we're gonna stick with Andromeda since we're already aimed at Andromeda. And of course, we got to shorten our exposure time. We're set to 5-minute exposures. So we shorten it to like a 1-second exposure. And now you can see that little spot. That's the center of the Andromeda galaxy. So now we're going to crank it down a little bit to ½ second. We're going to stretch the histogram a lot. And we're going to change it to hydrogen alpha. Now, if I could be up, if tomorrow night the weather is clear, I would rather capture this target in red, green, and blue filters. But since I want to go to bed, we're going to instruct the telescope to just do hydrogen for now. And hopefully we don't get like a bunch of cloudy nights for like an entire week. Good to see you, JLM. Thanks for dropping by. I'm about to wrap up, but you know me. Gotta aim the telescope before I do. I can't number them all, but aside from the 34 consoles that Zanzoltan has already, he still needs to buy an N64, GameCube, Sega, Dreamcast, Saturn, and Master System if I want to have them all. Gotta catch them all, huh, Zan? Gotta catch them all, Zanzoltan. That's not really, you know, he's catching consoles, not himself, but I still think it sounds cool. So what I'm looking for is like one bright star. And that's only because I want to make sure the camera's in the focus. So there we go. Got one star there. Couple stars here. They're probably already in focus, but I never trust it, so I always double check it. Nah, no pod racing because I can't find my freaking Pro Controller, JLM, but I did test out the N64. It worked. I had to make some adjustments. In order to play N64, I have to close OBS and reopen it, and realistically, it's a school night, so we're not playing pod racing until tomorrow night. But if I don't find my Pro Controller tomorrow, and I can't get comfortable using the Joy-Con, we will be playing pod racer on the N64, whoops, which is not hooked up properly anyway right now. But yeah, we know it works. So anyway, let's see here. 16-bit color. Now we're switching from red to hydrogen alpha. It basically blocks out all of the light pollution except for, you know, ionized hydrogen, basically a shade of ruby red. Zanzo10, yeah man, a friend of mine told me I'm collecting constants like Pokemon. Well, I'm close. Alright, so sometimes you get this little like spinner here and you gotta wait for it. Like if you click on it aggressively, the shit will freeze or say not responding. So unfortunately I just gotta wait for this mouse to come out of the K hold before I can move forward. So in the meantime, I'll just, you know what, we'll just do Andromeda, and we'll give it a name like SLV because this is how we aim the telescope. Now, I do have an automatic routine for aiming and centering the telescope, but I just don't trust it right now. So we're not going to waste time on that routine. I tested it out earlier today and I couldn't tell if it worked right. So we're just going to, like, you know, use the separate utility here to, you know, get that. See, look, it's acting like it's frozen, but it will snap out of it. It always does. And if I click on it, it'll do this. It will say, hey, it's not responding. Do you want to do this? And I'll be like, no, wait for it. See? And now it's working. So now we're on hydrogen. So once in a while it does that stupid thing, but it's not the end of the world. So now we're probably already in focus, but because I have trust issues with the, you know, telescope, we're going to make it blurry on purpose. And we're going to bring it back in. And sometimes I shrink it a little bit more than it needs to shrink, just to kind of like ensure that if the telescope cools down through the night, it'll kind of already be in focus, because I don't currently have proper autofocus working, and I'm going to see if I can get some help with that if I have trouble figuring it out. But I did a lot of troubleshooting to get to the point where it's at right now, and unfortunately I still can't rely on repeatable autofocus. So at this point, what we do is we tell the thing to go and run the picture for, in fact, no, we can't do that yet. We got to do a 9-second exposure or 18-second exposure. And what we're going to do is we save it to a folder and we tell the software, go to that folder, open up the picture I just took and compare it to the star map. So right here, we got one new picture. I'm going to tell the program, compare that to the star map. And it's going to compare that to the constellations. And it's going to like do that. You know, it's going to basically recenter the reticle. And yeah, so what else? I would get my hands on a PS1 and an NES. I have an NES laying around here. I think I might have a second NES, but I definitely have one. So right now this takes a few seconds. And this program does have a built-in way of doing it. But like I said, it looked like it worked earlier today, but I couldn't really confirm it was working. So I decided to like not get bent out of shape trying to test it out. So right now, this is just my target list that I keep, so I can copy and paste the names. And what we do is we're basically already centered, but the galaxy is almost in the center. But what's going to happen is when this is done scanning, you're going to see the orange or the yellow crosshair, which you can barely see right now, this little cross. It's going to move up a little bit. And once I see it move up a little bit, I can then say, hey, recenter it, and it'll recenter it. So usually it should be done any second now. And then presumably if I return tomorrow night, which like I said, I don't guarantee I do Tuesday shows. Sometimes I'm really tired on Tuesday. So I don't guarantee I do a Tuesday show. But Monday, like, I've been able to keep that commitment. So that's good. The only thing is that I haven't been good at ending it at 1 hour sharp. And anytime I'm doing astronomy, all bets are off because, you know, at that point, you know, I'm not leaving my desk, so I might as well keep streaming. I have an SNES Mini. I have an SNES Mini, but I haven't used it. I just keep it in the box. And a PSX Mini, PlayStation Mini. Honestly, it was easy to get all the games for the SNES. Yeah, that's true. That is true. And that's why flash cartridges are kind of a godsend. And I have a flash cartridge in my Game Boy Advance, so watch this. See, now the crosshair shifted a little bit. Now we can tell it to recenter on the target. And there we go. Now we know this is going to be in the actual center of the screen. And you'll see that because you're going to see the thingamajig like literally motion blur itself to the middle. See? Motion blur itself to the middle, and that's okay. And so what I do is I don't want to run the auto guiding until I'm absolutely sure that this thing has settled down. And so on the next picture, if it looks clear, then we can extend the settings and what have you. So basically by this shot, it should be good. Yeah, there we go. See, the galaxy's core is in the middle now. So now what we do is we're going to do, instead of picking a single star, we're going to scan and we're going to do multi-star guiding. And that seems to be working pretty good. In fact, better. So now we can lock on to, you know, multiple stars at, whoops, oh gosh. We got to do that again. There we go. Now we can scan it again. That will have to suffice. I don't know why it's picking a star on the friggin' edge of the camera angle, but it doesn't really matter. So now the star should be in focus, which I didn't really verify, but I think it's basically in focus. So we're going to just assume that's fine. And we're going to crank the exposure up to 300 seconds. Now, can I do longer? Yes and no. If I'm up in 20 minutes, I can see what the first picture comes up. Until I overhaul my backyard laptop, which I should probably do sooner than later, I have this weird issue where if I take a 5-minute exposure, the first picture takes 10 minutes to show up on the screen. After that, after the first 5-minute picture comes up, it takes 10 minutes, right? After that, it takes 5 minutes for every new frame. Because you got to take multiple pictures of the same target in order to get a quality, you know, image processing routine. So if I tell it to take a 10-minute exposure, it will take freaking 20 minutes for the first damned picture to show up. But, like, I might be up that long doing my own thing. And so, you know, while I clean up over here and whatnot and get ready for work tomorrow, make my sandwich and whatnot, that's my plan. So that's what we're doing. You know, we're just going to let the telescope automate. And tomorrow maybe I'll come back and work on my RX-78-2 Gundam. And the day after that, if my Victory 2 V2 Victory Gundam comes in the mail, whether or not I finish this RX-78-2, I am definitely starting on that friggin' Gundam the day I get it. Because I'm dying to do it. I'm looking forward to it. The only issue is I'm afraid of dropping a part and losing it. So I should probably come up with some kind of solution to that. But let's see what else we have here. Yeah, the minis are pretty cool, and sometimes, like, if you mod the SNES Mini, you can put more games on it. So you're not limited to the games that are on it if you're willing to be a little more adventurous with modding it, you know? And that's why, you know, I like my modded Xbox, even though now there's much newer hardware to play those games on. For a long time, the original Xbox being modded was good. I hear modded 360s are great, but I wouldn't want to get involved in that, although I hear they are good. A modded Wii is wonderful. A modded Nintendo Wii is wonderful because you can just have an external hard drive with Nintendo GameCube games on it and even Wii games on it. And so that's kind of cool, along with NES games and stuff. But anyway, I like my Game Boy Micro. My Game Boy Micro has a flash cartridge. It's basically, a Game Boy Micro is a miniature Game Boy Advanced. It doesn't play regular Game Boy game cartridges, but if you have a flash cartridge like the Easy Drive Easy Flash Omega, you can put NES games on the SD card and they will work on it. You can put NES games and regular Game Boy and Game Boy Color games on an SD card and they will work on a Game Boy Advanced or Game Boy Micro, which normally the Game Boy Micro will not play Game Boy or Game Boy Color and it will not play NES games. So the fact that you can now have those 3 platforms of games in addition to Game Boy Advance games on the Game Boy Micro is great. I mean, it's a dream come true to play Super Mario on a device that practically fits on a keychain. I think it's awesome. But anyway, enough on that. So like I said, as I'm falling asleep tonight, I'm going to check in about 20 minutes the status of this. And if it looks good, I'm going to tell the telescope, keep at it. And if not, I'm going to crank it down to a 5-minute exposure or adjust my ISO or gain or offset. But, you know, I'm tempted to tell it to run the temperature at a lower temperature. In fact, I could probably cool the image sensor down to like -20 maybe. I mean, we're going to see. There comes a point where if it's too hot outside, or if it won't be able to cool the sensor to, you know, below a certain temperature. But what happens is when you do a long exposure, you get a bunch of these pixels that look like stars, but they're not stars. They're called hot pixels, basically. And the cooler you could cool down the image sensor, you could reduce the amount of hot pixels, and that makes it a little easier during the image processing. But anyway, I'll deal with that. Yeah, I have like my, I don't have my original Wii, but when I was working at Best Buy, I picked a bunch of Wiis from the waste recycling heap, basically. And so I ended up with a bunch. No worries, I'm literally ending this stream right now, Tommy. So once again, everybody, check out Tommy and the Guinea Pig Collective. I posted his link earlier, and I bet you it's still in my clipboard. It is not. But you know what? I'm going to show some love. We're going to put every link in order. And I'm just going to put names here. I'm not going to put the name of the channel. I'm just going to put names because I don't, you know, unfortunately, I just want to get going here, you know? But we got Raquel SSG, which I believe means Super Stargate Girl. No, I'm kidding. I know that's not what it means, but Super Stargate Girl. That'd be cool. Or Stargate is cool. I like Stargate. Damn it, I keep clicking on the wrong one. Okay, let's try this one more time. There we go. We got Raquel SSG. Raquel's channel. And Zanzo10, do you do content? He has not updated his content. Good, because I'm too lazy to post your link right now. No, I'm kidding. You know, I'm quite fond of you, Zanzo10. You're a good man. So let's see. I'll just clean up my screen a little bit. And yeah, so we'll let that rip. But anyway, for anybody watching on the replay, if you have any questions, comments, or ideas, please leave a comment. As for everybody in the chat, I want to give a shout out to Zanzo10, Tommy, and the Guinea Pig Collective. Yeah, what is your gaming channel? Yeah, I would say throw up the link for me if you have it. But I mean, like, I know because you don't have a wrench, you can't post the link directly, and then people have to copy and paste that. But let's see if I can find that. Is it just Raquel SSG Gaming? Let's see, I'm going to try copying and pasting your name. Hopefully, oh, thank God. Okay, good, that's easy. Yeah, I got you, Raquel. So, subscribe to Raquel's gaming channel. There we go. And so once again, a shout out to Raquel SSG2211 who has a gaming channel, and I just posted it in the chat. Zanzo10, lifelong friend, a longtime friend of the channel. We have, of course, you know, JLM, our newest mod. We got Pop Culture Mechanic, who does a show tomorrow night called Trades Talk. And I guess I have to post a link to that too, because you guys need to see. In fact, I bet you he already has the link. No, he didn't put it up yet. Maybe he's not doing a show tomorrow, but check out Pop Culture Mechanic's channel and subscribe to it. So if he does Trades Talk tomorrow, you can see his channel. And beyond that, what else we got here? You know, we got Zanziton and Pop Culture Mechanic. And last but not least, I just want to make sure I'm not forgetting anyone else before I name the... Oh, yeah, Backup Channel. We got Backup Channel. And Bone. Bone, of course, friend of Eric O'Sullivan. And, of course, last but not least, Lady Mist, Lady of the Void. It's always a delight to see you here. And, of course, everyone else is good to see you guys, too. But, you know, Lady Mist is cool. So, anyway, no, jokes aside, you're all cool, okay? Let's stop with the, you know, insults. I'm kidding around here. But, no, seriously, though, you guys are wonderful. I appreciate you guys and your patronage and for hanging out with me tonight. I hope I was able to, you know, reasonably entertain you guys. And tomorrow, if I play Pod Racer, I will test out the game before I begin playing the game. So, we won't be jerking around with these settings before... you know, on stream. So with that being said, for anybody watching on the replay, if you have any questions, comments, or ideas, please leave a comment. Please like and subscribe, including you guys in the chat right here. And for now, we shall end transmission.